Hey guys, it's the Duke and Sir Solverston, Richard Evans. And wow, things have been kind of crazy. Haven't been able to talk to anybody for a couple of weeks. Um, my wife was in the hospital and a couple of other things. And so the first 2 weeks of the Vegas Golden Knights, I really haven't been able to talk too much about. But boy, is there a lot to talk about. Um, 6 wins, 1 loss. Just beat the St. Louis Blues in overtime. They've had 3 overtime wins, setting records for an expansion team, and they're just going crazy. And I tell you what, if anyone told you that they knew this was going to happen, they're lying to you. No one, even the people with the greatest optimism, would never have said anything like this. Even Coach Gallant, George McPhee, uh, nobody could have had any clue. Now, there's a lot of things that are coming true on the Golden Knights that I suspected, um, and I'll talk about that just in a bit. But I have a couple of things I just wanted to mention. Um, of course, the great spot is how the team is playing. When everything was drafted, a lot of people were saying, "Oh, this is going to be a terrible team. You know, they'll be lucky to." I heard anywhere from I think the highest win total that people were predicting was about 28 wins. A lot of people were saying 20 wins. There was a couple of real idiots out there, and you know who you are, um, who were saying 12 wins or even 10 wins. They said this was just going to be so awful of a team. And I didn't think they would be that bad. And again, what I've mentioned a couple of times in some different other venues besides my vlog here is that I suspected they were going to be a fairly deep team. Because just the way the draft was set up, they were getting a lot of people who were third and fourth liners off of teams. And some of those teams were deep. And because of that, they were able to pick up some people who were experienced in the NHL, but maybe because of the logjam and the top lines, they hadn't really had their chance to really get the ice minutes. And so, if they went ahead, and by they I mean George McPhee and the Brain Trust, were able to pick and choose carefully, they could get some people that would have a chance to do better in the NHL if they were given a bigger role. And so, there's been a lot of them that have come into uh, the Golden Knights roster. They have taken their chances. They've excelled well. People like Carlson, people, um, and these are experienced and have done well. People like Eakin and uh, Neal, they've done well, but they haven't really been the top line. But they have shown an ability to play well when they've been given the opportunity, and now they're being given the opportunity, and they're just doing fantastic. Uh, and it's all the way up and down. You can go ahead and go through the entire roster. When I checked the stats last night, out of the roster of 23, 20 of them had at least 1 point, which you just don't see. A lot of teams, they'll get one line that seems to do most of the scoring. They'll get a couple trickle from here and there. But here, the performances are literally coming up and down the entire roster. And so they're a very deep team. They're a very strong team. They have gelled together so well. And, you know, that was one of my biggest worries coming into the season is how well can you get these disparate um, players from all these different systems to go ahead and come together and buy into a system. And they just about every single one of them has a reputation as being a hard worker and a grinder and someone who's not uh, afraid to get their gloves dirty, to get the things done that has to be done. That's one of the priorities that George McPhee was working for, is those type of people. They, again, a lot of the people were whining and crying, well, you didn't get the best people you could have. But a lot of times they were overpassing some of the better talent simply because they were looking at things of work ethic and how well would they play within the system. So they didn't necessarily get the player that was the most talented that was available in the expansion draft. They were getting the one that they thought would probably be the best fit for what they wanted to do. And even though it was a horrible tragedy, they had the massacre at the where at the current count, 58 people were murdered by an idiot. Shocked the city, horrified the city, but brought the city together. And I think it also went a huge step to bring the Las Vegas Golden Knights together, because they were out, they were going to hospitals, they were going to fire stations, they were going to food kitchens, they were going to all over the place, getting involved in the community. And I think they did a great job of melding into a community. And this is, the Vegas Knights are fighting for a city, and they're fighting for each other. And now they are just working so well together, and they're playing so hard. I think a lot of them are playing with so much joy. In fact, in part because they've seen the evil, and they really had it affirmed how blessed that we are to be alive and be able to play professional hockey as far as they are able to do. And they're out there, they're playing with an abandon and a joy, but also a discipline and a camaraderie and a unity. And that's what's giving them the wins. They are not scared of any moment. And I think that's probably something that the massacre probably did for them, because they've seen something that was far more horrible than anything they could see on an ice hockey rink. And nothing scares them now. They've been through something much worse than anyone else on that ice can imagine. And in some ways, something so horrible can be freeing. And that's why the Knights are playing at historically great levels for an expansion team. What happens with the rest of the year? Well, how far can they keep it up? Hard to tell. There's going to be a lot more tests in the middle of the season. What happens when they have a couple of losses in a row? And it will happen. Will they continue to forge ahead and work to prove people wrong? Will it take the edge off them so they start making losses? We'll have to see. But the biggest question, I think, is going to be is if some of this continues and it looks like they are going to be playing important games when we start getting towards trade deadline, towards the end of the year. Everyone's expected that when it starts getting close to trade deadline, George McPhee was going to be looking to trade some folks to get more assets to build toward the future, because they're not just looking at this year, they're looking for what's going to be working 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 7 years from now. And we were expecting a lot of different assets, a lot of different players being traded away to get assets for the next few years. Now, if all of a sudden the way they're playing continues to move on, and the Knights have a chance to get into the playoffs, will George McPhee hold off on making trades? Maybe even make another trade to bring, a couple of people in to help out with the firepower? Or will he stay the path and still do trades, even if that might spoil the end of this season, because he's still building toward the future? How'd you like to be in that place when that question has to happen? I have a hunch George McPhee is disciplined enough and he's got enough trust from Foley and Gallant that he will stay the path. He may not be as heavy on it as he might have otherwise. Of course, part of the problem now is so many people are having issues with what they're doing, defense wise and whatever. There's lots of teams out there that are struggling, and those assets, the defensemen and everybody, the assets that have been stocked up by McPhee from the expansion draft and everything else, it has to be looking better and better as they go along. But he's probably going to have to pull some trades before too long. How will that work out? We'll have to see. Final question: is Subban injured last night? They won with their third goalie, Dansk, who did a very good job considering it was his first NHL game. Got the win in his first NHL game. But the Chicago Blackhawks are coming into town this next week. Do you want your third string goalie in there? Not really, but on the other hand, what are the options? I don't think we're trading for another goalie, especially since Fleury is probably going to be back fairly soon. But what's the status with Subban? Is, a few days going to get him back? Don't know. They're not going to say until they're there. Is it going to be something that keeps him out a couple of weeks, a month or two? Who knows? So Lagasse is probably going to be brought back up from the AHL. It would be my guess, unless Subban's injury is a lot more minor than it looked. So we'll have to see. Lots of questions, but it's a great ride. Let's see how far we can go. Knights, go Knights, go.